I have to talk about something that I've been accused of many times: cultural appropriation. Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So, over the course of me talking about Viking related stuff on my channel, I have been accused of cultural appropriation multiple times, every single time by someone with right-leaning views. And I don't like that. Of course, it would be very easy for me to say, no, what I do is not cultural appropriation, but that's an easy excuse to make. So today I really want to look at what cultural appropriation actually means and whether my activities within Viking related stuff correspond with the definition of cultural appropriation. So before I get into it, if you are new here, my name is David. I just finished my bachelor's degree in Scandinavian studies at the University of Amsterdam, and I will be studying Viking and medieval Norse studies at the University of Iceland starting next month. So I have a background in Viking related things, and I will be continuing an academic career in Viking related things. Now I'm gonna be very open about where I got this knowledge from. So while yes, my original university is based in the Netherlands, a country which does not claim Viking heritage a lot, although technically they could. And of course that suggests studying one culture from the perspective of another seemingly unrelated one, which could hint at cultural appropriation. However, I went on exchange to Stockholm University, where I followed, amongst other things, Viking Age archaeology, given by a Swedish teacher, from Sweden, and where I got to visit Viking Age archaeological sites, in Sweden. And then I have also gone to some other external lectures on the Viking Age in Norway. That Norway, specifically in a place called Borre, which is located near the Viken region, a region that possibly may have given its name to the Vikings. So again, this is where I get my knowledge on the Viking Age from. Of course, I have also read up things because I am interested in this. I have read most of the prominent scholars from Viking Age studies, and I will get to explaining what cultural appropriation literally means. But I'm saying this to show you guys that I have some ethically acquired knowledge on the Viking Age that I get from the people whose countries claim Viking history and Viking ancestry. Now, to return to my main point, what does cultural appropriation mean? It is a term that I would say is overused these days, and many times it's not used by the people whose culture is being appropriated, but rather people who think they can speak on behalf of marginalized groups, on communities that they do not belong to, in terms of whether one's position towards that group is appropriation or not. But when we look at definitions of cultural appropriation, it generally means an uneven power dynamic between two cultures in which the higher one takes elements of the lower one, usually with force and without the consent of the people who cannot do anything about it. A very good example is white Americans taking things over from African Americans and claiming it as their own without giving the right credit to the people that they took it from. And there are different opinions, both from the African American side and the European American side, as to what exactly is appropriation and what is just taking elements of one culture and simply just enjoying and using them. And the line can be very thin sometimes. There can be people from said culture who think that others using their culture is great because it gives them visibility, it gives more people joy in the things that they created. And there are people who think that some cultural practices should be protected and should not be used by others. And both standpoints are equally valid and should be equally listened to. So you might be wondering if it is possible to appropriate a culture which has been historically constructed and no longer exists. Because Viking culture is something that scholars of the Viking Age made up in order to have something to study. Now, I do not mean made up in the sense that it is fantasy and it does not exist. It means that it is generalizing, it is taking not realistically related elements and creating a coherent whole out of it to present a historically continuous community. For example, the Vikings are given art styles, they are given a language, they're given music, they're given all kinds of things that, well, are based in a historical reality that can be proven through both material and literary sources, but in the bigger picture are simply loose elements that may or may not be used in multiple areas. So, for example, a Viking Age culture could mean skaldic and Eddic poetry, the recital of poems for special occasions or for certain people at king's courts, stuff like that. Does that mean only people living in Scandinavia ever did this? Of course not. But they are associated with it because this is what has been written down and is known today. Another aspect of Viking culture can, for example, be specific Viking Age art styles, and a way in which this could be appropriated would be the misuse of these art styles, of this symbolism, for modern day political goals. And while it is right-wing individuals who tell me that I am appropriating the Viking Age, I would say the best example of cultural appropriation of Viking culture is the misuse by right-wing people since the 19th century. So the image of the Viking has been used in order to strengthen or create national identities, and later also with racial connotations. And for example, Viking symbols such as runes have later been used by Nazis, meaning that they are taken from their original context by a community with more power over them, because the Vikings can no longer speak about how their culture is used because they are dead. So in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, that is a form of cultural appropriation of the Viking Age. Another thing that could be said is the creation of Viking music by artists who do not really look at the history of what music may have been played in that time period, what instruments may be used, but rather look at what are other people creating, what is popular now, how can I use this to create something popular that gives me a lot of money. So it's like indirect appropriation. But why do people think I am appropriating Viking Age culture? Well, the answer is very simple, because I am queer. And for those people who are calling my activity on this channel cultural appropriation, they do not like the fact that someone who calls themselves queer is interested in the Viking Age. They think that it is someone who should not have a right to engage with this culture because they see themselves as the only people who have a right to this culture. Basically, they're saying you're appropriating my culture. And I would love to say I understand that, but honestly, I don't. It's a bullshit argument. It does not make sense. Of course, everyone has a right to their own opinion. And my opinion is that everyone is allowed to express interest in a culture, whatever culture that might be. And of course, there are limits to what you can do as an outsider. But in the case of a historical community like the Vikings, I think it's actually very important that people of non-Scandinavian descent, people that are not traditionally associated with interested in the Viking Age are interested in it because they can bring new perspectives to the discipline. Obviously, if it's always Western white men studying the Viking Age, men who are from Scandinavia or from England or from Iceland, then obviously they are going to continue saying the same things because they fit their reality and they support their goals. And of course, not every white man from the West is conservative or has some sort of nationalist goals. Like I myself am a white man, although I was born in Poland and I'm mostly Slavic when it comes to ethnicity. So some people even go as far as to say that I am not white, which is interesting. So to answer this question, am I culturally appropriating Viking culture? I would say not. Mainly also because I am not pretending to be a Viking. I'm not pretending to be of Scandinavian descent. I am not pretending that I have more to do with it than I do. Like, only once have I appeared in front of an audience in historically accurate Viking Age clothing. But that was asked from me by a Norwegian community. You know, people from Norway, from where people who are now called the Vikings are from. I have been asked by them to talk about something which they consider their history. And no one at that event believed that to be cultural appropriation. And the very important aspect is also the Vikings are dead. No one is a Viking anymore. That was a very specific label used for a very specific community of people based on their job, their activities. It really doesn't have anything to do with culture. Like, yes, of course, people who went on sea voyages would have had a distinct culture from those who did not. But the people who lived in Scandinavia during the Viking Age had extensive trading and cultural contacts with the Sami people, with people from England, Ireland, from the Arab world, from the Slavic world. So how can we appropriate a culture that was already so diverse and that was not a single entity? So what I wanted to say today is that no, I do not believe that me as a queer person engaging in the topic of the Viking Age is somehow appropriating this culture. And I also do not believe that anyone in the 21st century could do a direct claim as to Viking Age culture being their culture. It belongs to people who are no longer present. We can only be interested in their culture and try to uncover as much as possible about it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. If you're still watching, thank you so much for supporting me, and I hope you enjoy this. Feel free to watch more of my videos if you want to, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.